Hey gang, it's JC and this is your Daily Dose for Tuesday, September 28th, 2010, a cooperative venture with Mind Active in beautiful downtown Brentwood. We're going for the Meet the Beatles Terminator look today because I didn't want to look at the sun because I start sneezing and then squinting and I look ridiculous. So just got half a thing going on here. We can get us on the mobile phone now. Daily Dose available on your mobile phone. Archives, top of the page. Eye Candy Archives, bottom of the page. Dave's weather forecast and the audio on iTunes anytime you want it as we roll on with our 15-month paid vacation here at jc'sdailydose.com. And a reminder that in a couple of days here we're going to give you a chance to win one of these from 7-Eleven, the 52-ounce Extreme the Extreme Gulp. These things are 52 ounces, as I pointed out yesterday, the size of a human head. And I got a pretty good sized melon here, and this thing, look, it's bigger than my head. Anyhow, so let me just get a chance to win one of those later on here, maybe later on in the week. Well, George Lopez, comedian, talk show host. I don't think the guy's funny. He's just not my cup of tea, but I know a lot of people like him. He's been married 17 years to the same woman, and he had some kidney trouble a couple of years ago, and his wife comes along and says, well, honey, I'll give you one of my kidneys. I mean, you think to yourself, wow, what a marriage. You know, the wife gives him a kidney. That is a really, really strong marriage. Oh, they're getting a divorce. Sorry. Heat wave in Southern California. Yesterday in Los Angeles, 113 degrees. That was the temperature. That's not like that feels like temperature. 113 on the thermometer. The crosses in Mel Gibson's front yard were catching on fire by themselves. A couple in New Jersey set a new world record with a 33-hour-long kiss last week. They broke the previous record set by Karen Foss and a mirror. House Minority Leader John Boehner is being accused of having an affair with a female lobbyist. What kind of Republican is he, having sex with a woman? All right. Tim Ezzell does a show on Fox 2 every morning at 9 o'clock. I had a difficult time trying to describe what it is that Tim does, but it's a very popular show. And there's a woman who pops up on that show periodically who works for Alive magazine. Her name is Jill Manoff. And she is the fashion person, comes on and says, and you wear this, and you can look just like Paris Hilton. And if you wear this, you can just look like Britney Spears. And put these shoes on, and you'll look just like Paris Hilton and Britney Spears. And you just sit there and go, who is this woman? Anyhow, she worked for Alive magazine. And yesterday, she committed what we refer to in the business as a nip slip. Not much there, but still, nonetheless, matter of fact, it's still on Fox 2's website, fox2now.com. Go to the little icon that says 9 a.m. with Tim Ezzell, and then click on Fall Fashion, Clogs Are Back, and you'll see Joel Manoff's nip slip. At least you will until they hear about this and then take it down. Stephen Colbert testifying in front of Congress last week. Fox News up in arms. Funny, I didn't see them up in arms when Elmo testified in front of Congress a couple of years ago. In Minnesota, Tara Wang is marrying Austin DeCock. That is the Wang DeCock wedding. By the way, did I mention it's in Minnesota? It's in Moorhead. I can't make stuff like this up. You got your Google. Are you ready for Jugal? It looks just like Google, but it only gives you kosher results. I can't make stuff like this up. People in their 20s are doing less driving than at any point in history. They would rather text their friends than drive over to see them. And therefore, in 1995, for example, people in their 20s accounted for 21% of all the total miles driven in this country. Today, that's down to only 14%, from 21 down to 14, because people are texting one another instead of driving over to go see them. This is just sick behavior. In 1978, 50% of 16-year-olds had their driver's license. In 2008, the last year that numbers were available, that number was just 31%. I don't understand a lot of stuff anymore. I'm not afraid to admit it. Keeping track of the TV ratings for the new fall shows and the season premieres, 60 Minutes, in their 43rd season, was the #1 show on Sunday night, 15.1 million viewers. people are still watching Desperate Housewives. I had no idea. 12.8 million people watching Desperate Housewives. What? The Cleveland show did only 6.6 million viewers. That's not too good. New Phil Collins album today. He covers a lot of his favorite Motown tunes. He does Papa Was a Rolling Stone. I'm going to have to be convinced on that. Eric Clapton, new album today. New songs and some covers. He's got Steve Winwood and Sheryl Crow playing with him and singing with him on that album. The Doobie Brothers, for their first album in 10 years, they got Willie Nelson on this album. All right, got bits and pieces here for you today. Last December, a 62-year-old British guy, a millionaire named Jimmy Heselden, bought the company that makes Segways. You know those things that you stand on and you sort of lean and there's two wheels and you know all over the place. George Bush fell off of one. So this guy is worth $260 million, had just recently given away $16 million to charity, and he's driving one of his own Segways on Sunday somewhere in England, goes off a cliff, plunged 30 feet, D-E-A-D. Last week, 22-year-old James Richmond of Sanford, Florida, was on trial for lewd and lascivious behavior. Back in November, he drove past a school bus headed for a little school in Florida and appeared to whip out his package and play with it in front of teenagers. Well, they caught him. If he had been found guilty, he could have faced up to 30 years in prison and would have had to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life. But he got off. Maybe not a good choice of words. He was acquitted because his lawyer was able to prove that James never exposed his genitalia to the kids. And the kids were like, wait a minute, we saw it! Well, he was wearing a Halloween costume that featured a large, fake male organ. The guy got off. And as I said, bad choice of words. All right, today is Celebrity Tuesday. We're going to cheat a little bit today because normally I pick out one celebrity who, you know, was more than just the 10-minute interview or something like that. Somebody I actually spent some time with and got to know. Going to cheat a little bit today because we're going to talk about sort of more like a celebrity encounter, but lots of celebrities. And I have to sort of tell you the stories. Back in 1991, the cast of Saturday Night Live included Dennis Miller, Phil Hartman, Chris Farley, Dana Carvey, Jan Hooks, Victoria Jackson, Kevin Nealon, Al Franken, Tim Meadows, Chris Rock, Adam Sandler, Rob Schneider, David Spade, and Julia Sweeney. Not a bad cast. So we're doing the radio show in New York back in, let me see if I have the date here. I do have the date. The date is, I put it in the back, hold on. The date was February 23rd, 1991. So the 23rd of February, 1991 is what we're talking about here. And we had been in town in New York the whole previous week doing a Grammy week. And I think you probably remember that if you listen to the show. They would set us up in a hotel, almost like a Carnival Midway, and there were radio stations from all over the country, and they would bring stars in, and they would hop from table to table to table, and you get like, 7 to 10 minutes with each one of these stars, and they brought in some pretty impressive people. We really were having a great time doing that. So, figure, well, can we get our way into Saturday Night Live? Because they're doing a show on Saturday night, and let's try to get into the show. So I had a friend at that time who was the assistant to Tom Brokaw. He's like, want to see Saturday Night Live? No problem, I can get you into that. So sure enough, Alec Baldwin was the host. Whitney Houston was the musical host. And, they do a dress rehearsal at 8 o'clock. And that's actually, I've been to that a couple of times too. And that's really fun because they do about another half hour, sometimes 45 minutes of additional material. And then between the time that dress rehearsal ends at about 11 o'clock and the time the show, 10 o'clock. And then they got about 90 minutes before the show goes live. They sort of whittle the thing down. They decide which bits worked, which sketches didn't work. And they reassemble the show, put it all together. And it's sort of fun after attending the dress rehearsal and then go watch the show on TV and see what they took out and see what they moved around. In this particular case, though, actually got to go to the show. Well, now the story gets even better because now this guy's name was Emmett Kelly, assistant to Tom Brokaw. He says, you want to go to the cast party? I'm like, how am I going to get into a Saturday Night Live cast party? He goes, oh, I go all the time. No problem. Come in with me. Sure enough, 1 o'clock in the morning, we are at a place on the Upper West Side called Carmine's in Manhattan. I come walking in, and there's everybody from Saturday Night Live. And they're just sitting in booths and standing, drinking and talking and hanging out. And there's like, there must have been 150 people at this party, but a lot of the people from Saturday Night Live were there. The first person I saw when I walked in was Phil Hartman. and he was sitting at a table, sort of in a booth, with Marcy Klein, who was Calvin Klein's daughter, who at that time was just sort of hanging around. Now she's a big-time producer, but back then it was like, oh, that's Marcy Klein, I know her. And dressed very well, as you might imagine. And Phil Hartman was just like face down, and he had drinks, empty glasses, just sort of lined up on his table. I don't know what the deal was. I don't remember it being a particularly stressful or awful show. Matter of fact, it was a pretty good show. Alec Baldwin was always a good host on Saturday night. For some reason, Phil Hartman was drinking heavily. So then the next, sort of off in the distance, I see Chris Farley. And again, keep in mind, he had only been with the show a year or two at this point. This is 1991. And Chris Farley is riding the back of executive producer Lorne Michaels. Now, Lorne Michaels is not a big guy, and Chris Farley, as you know, was a huge guy, and everybody's laughing. And I'm thinking to myself, man, this guy's got some balls to be jumping on the back of the executive producer, the guy who calls the shots, and the guy who is not exactly known for being, well, he's wound a little tight sometimes, Lorne Michaels is. Even though he does a comedy show, he's one of those guys, you know. So I was watching that, and I thought that was amazing. So then I'm walking along, and I come face to face with Dana Carvey, who looks at me and clearly remembers me from not only the shows that I emceed at the Westport Playhouse that he did, but also he did almost 2 hours live in the studio with us at KSD back about a year prior to that. And he looks at me like, I know who you are, but I can't. And all he says to me is, "You're my favorite radio personality," almost in that Garth voice. And I reintroduced myself. He's like, yeah, okay, I remember JC, blah, blah, blah. So we talked for a little while, and then he introduced me to Mike Myers, who was standing right next to him. So Mike Myers, huge hockey fan, as you probably know, and he was talking about wanting to meet Brett Hull, who at the time was the biggest thing in hockey, as you'll recall. And he just said, well, yeah, I want to do that. Maybe I could come to St. Louis, so if I came, you could introduce me to Brett Hull. I'm like, of course, he's a bud of mine. I went to his 30th birthday party. Be happy to introduce you to Brett Hull. He'd be probably more excited than you. Oh, no, I would be so excited. And then he said, well, but I got to finish this script. I'm like, a script of what? He goes, I'm writing this movie. And he sort of downplayed it. Well, of course, a year later, Wayne's World comes out, So it was quite a scene, though. I think we left that party at like 4:30 in the morning. And by the way, that party didn't look like it was anywhere near being finished, but I was finished, so I went home. But it was quite a night, really something to see. Watch these people sort of in a different sort of habitat. All right, a couple of notes here before we go. Ken Burns' two-part baseball special begins tonight on Channel 9 PBS, tonight and tomorrow night. And by the way, you'll see our pal Deanne Lane in the shot. Will Rafael Palmeiro and Mark McGuire testify in front of Congress about the steroid scandal. And if you look in the back, you'll see Deanne right in the shot in both of those testimonies. Glee, Britney Spears show tonight. John Stamos is going to be on. Inside the Actors Studio, she's everywhere. Betty White tonight on Bravo, 7 o'clock St. Louis time on Inside the Actors Studio. All right, JC's Video Village back to 1993 and my interview with Andy Rooney in New York at that goofy desk in that little office where he does his commentaries. Also, the Wayback Machine also goes back to 1993, and the story that John Perchborn did on Channel 5 at the time about my arrival at KMOX Radio for my 53 shows there. Old School Photo goes back to 1980, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You'll have to look at it. JC's Eye Candy, Kit Bond throws out the first pitch at a Cardinal game over the weekend. Was he throwing a booger ball? Look at the picture. You'll know what I'm talking about. All right, that's it. JC's Daily Dose for Tuesday, September 28th, 2010, a cooperative venture with Mind Active in beautiful downtown Brentwood. We'll be back tomorrow. Tell your friends. In the meantime, we've beaten this one to death. Have a good one. See you later. Bye.